Hey guys, I'm EJ and this is Kendall here, and we're going to be discussing the top NBA draft prospects at the small forward position this upcoming draft. Now, Kendall, we've talked about Alonzo Ball and Fultz in an earlier video. We make sure we would definitely suggest you guys check that video out. But today we're going to be talking about three of the top small forwards in this draft: Florida State's Jonathan Isaac, Kansas' Josh Jackson, and Duke's Jayson Tatum. Now, these guys have been talked about a lot in terms of where they stack amongst each other. But all three of these guys considered to be probably top 10 picks. So basically today what we're going to do is we're going to rank each of these three guys and see where we think they should end up falling out in this year's draft. So Kendall, I'm going to turn to you first. Where do you rank Jackson, Tatum, and Isaac?
Well, EJ, on my big board, I have it kind of laid out. Jackson number one. I have Jayson Tatum number two out of Duke, and then number three I have Jonathan Isaac. And, you know, most people are going to listen to that and say, oh, that's chalk. I mean, most people have Josh Jackson, Jayson Tatum, Jonathan Isaac, 1, 2, 3. But for me, when you look at Jackson, number one, you're talking about a guy that is an elite 3-and-D prospect in today's NBA. And I think in today's NBA, you need two-way players, especially at the wing position. I mean, you look at the number one guy everybody points to when they talk about Josh Jackson is Kawhi Leonard. And that's what makes this guy so valuable in today's NBA. The questions you have with Isaac, not with Isaac, but with Jackson are his character concerns, and whether or not he has superstar potential, especially offensively. But I just love him as a prospect. Another thing that I don't like that people aren't really talking about is the fact that he's 20 years old, which is a lot older than a lot of these freshmen that are coming up. But number two, though, I have Jayson Tatum, who I think is one of, if not the best, scoring prospects in this draft. I'm talking about a guy that has as advanced an offensive game as you'll see for a 19-year-old coming out of his first year in college. And part of me feels like he got held back at Duke, given the system. You know, he played with Luke Kennard and Grayson Allen, and those guys got most of the touches, especially early on in the season, because he was coming back from his injury. But we saw late in the season, in postseason play in March, he really exploded, and that could be the guy that we see going forward in the NBA. And then at number three, I have Jonathan Isaac, who I'm not as highly on as some people are, because I think Isaac is a guy that he's an enigma. You know, he's a guy that, you know, has never shown that he's ever going to be capable of being a number one guy, a number two guy. Me personally, I project him as more of a 3-and-D guy that's going to be able to hit the corner three or hit the wing three, and he's going to defend at a really high level. He's an excellent rim protector, and you love his size. I kind of like him to a Chandler Parsons a little bit. You know, Chandler Parsons is a guy, before his knee injuries, was a very good defender and could hit the three, could score in spots, but was never a superstar. And, you know, if that's what you get with Jonathan Isaac, that's a top 10 pick in this draft, in my opinion.
So we have a very different top three, so this is going to be very interesting when we end up discussing them. But for number one, for me, I have Jayson Tatum from Duke. Tatum, there's a lot to like with this guy. As you said, his offensive game is super advanced. He can score in the mid-range. He can hit from three. He can get to the rim, though that's one of my concerns with him is his ability to finish through contact. I think sometimes he can get bodied up and kind of throwing up some lazy shots at times. But his offensive ability, as you said, is extremely advanced. In some ways, it reminds me very much of a Duke forward that just came out not that long ago in Jabari Parker. He's your typical ISO wing type scorer. So I like Tatum a lot, and I think he's very ready to play in the NBA next year. So I have him number one. Number two, I actually have Jonathan Isaac, and I think me and you differ very much on why on what we think he will be in the NBA. Isaac, I think, is one of those guys where if I was a GM, I'd be terrified of not drafting him because I look at his skill level, I look at his size, and I look at his defense, and I see a guy who could end up being a special player, a player that we don't see very often. No disrespect to Tatum or Jackson, but those type of players we've seen. I've seen a type of player like Jayson Tatum. I've seen a type of player like Josh Jackson. But with Isaac, there are very few guys who
The
are
type of player we've seen is Greek Freak.
Right. I mean, yeah, there are very few guys who are 6'11", can handle like a guard, can shoot like a guard, can defend 3 or 4 positions. There are only a few guys in the league that can do that, and Isaac fits all those criteria. I understand the concerns with production and him kind of disappearing in games, but I take some of that to say he was on a team with a lot of guys who wanted to show that they were going to be in the NBA. And I put it to youth. I think you need to kind of grow and kind of help him grow and kind of mature his game.
He went to a veteran team.
Yeah, he went to a veteran team. He was a piece on a veteran team. But I think if he went to a different school, those numbers would be a lot more inflated.
Bloomer.
And yeah, exactly, he was late bloomer.
Like Tatum went to a veteran team, but Tatum was, for some people, the best prospect.
Yeah, he was a ready finished product. So I think there's a lot growth still left for Jonathan Isaac, and I think he could end up being a fantastic player. And I have Jackson at 3. And it's just maybe I don't like him or I think that he's going to be a bust. That's not the case at all. I actually like Jackson a lot. I think my only problem with Jackson is, do I see anything in his game that suggests he could be anything more than a role player? And so far, I can't say for sure that I have. I think he's a guy who, I think shooting the ball in the NBA is going to be a lot troublesome. I know his numbers in terms of three-point shooting and spot shooting in college weren't nearly as bad as maybe you think when you look at the way he shoots the ball. But I suggest when he has to shoot from the NBA three-point line, that's going to be troublesome. And I think he kind of runs on that Ron Artest line of is he really competitive or is he out of control? And that kind of worries me too when you talk about his character. So those things would concern me a little bit. So I have him behind Isaac because I look at Isaac's upside and I see a guy who could be a star. With Jackson, I see a guy who could be a very good player in this league. I think Andre Iguodala is a very good comparison. But I don't know if I see a guy who could be a star in this league.
Yeah, real quick on Isaac. What's similar with that line of thinking where you'd be worried about not drafting Isaac because he could become a superstar is the same line that I'm sure Danny Ainge and a lot of other GMs were thinking on when they decided not to draft Greek Freak. Danny Ainge said he thought it was going to be next Scottie Pippen and decided not to draft him. Yeah. So that could be the line of thinking there. Me personally with Isaac, I'm almost the opposite, where I'm like, I don't be scared to draft him because he could end up being, and I hate when people say this guy has the most bust potential in the draft, right. But in terms of those top 10 guys, those top 8 guys that we always talk about, I think he's the one that has the lowest floor of, he may not ever be a contributing NBA player, or he may not ever be anybody that has an impact beyond coming off the bench and playing a role.
I think that's where I think player development comes in. Like if I was a general manager, I'd say, look, the mold of clay, all the tools are there. Like if I'm a chef, all the ingredients of making a great meal are there. It's all about now just putting it together. And then what's in the player's mindset? How does he love the game? Does he love working? Does he look like a guy that wants to compete? I mean, this guy competes hard. This is a guy who looks like he weighs 170, but he was one of the top rebounders on his team, one of the top rebounding small forwards in college basketball. So I know the guy works hard and that he's not gonna play soft or he's not gonna, shy away from playing and working on his game. So I think it comes down to really you got to have faith in yourself. You got to have faith in that you're able to get as much out of this guy as you can. So when I say, okay, I look at him, I look at Jackson, I see who can I get the most out of based on my player development skills, I'm going to go with Isaac. I think there's no brainer based on the fact that he has a bigger upside.
And that's where team fit comes into this because I don't know if I want Isaac going to Sacramento. I'm not saying Sacramento. I mean, most people will say Sacramento is basketball abyss. It's the place where players go to die. But when you look at Sacramento, though, I think if Jackson went there, they may be better fit because they're more NBA ready. They may be able to go in there, maybe change the culture. Whereas if Isaac maybe ends up in Minnesota, where he can kind of play a role early on, but fit on that team, he can maybe blossom. Whereas someone like Tatum may go to Minnesota and kind of get lost in the shuffle because he's a good player, but he's not used to playing that kind of role.
Real quickly, why Jackson over Tatum?
Why Jackson over Tatum? I like both guys, but for me, Tatum doesn't have the upside that Josh Jackson has. Mm-hmm. And all these guys have upside. All these guys could be all-stars, or you wouldn't draft them in the top 5 or the top 8. But for me, Jackson, he'll give you the offensive side of the ball, even though he may not be the shooter or the pure scorer that Tatum is. He has the playmaking ability, but he also gives you the defensive side of the ball, and that's something that Tatum, while he's not a bad defender, isn't. And real quick on Jackson's defense, I don't want to overrate Jackson's defense because I've been one saying that I think his off-the-ball defense and his he's good playing the passing league, but his defensive IQ is very low, and that's something I think people, if they watch the tape, will notice. But for me, though, I just think you're looking at a guy that will be a contributing NBA player, will be a guy that is a starting small forward for 8 to 9 years in this league.
I agree. I think it's hard to imagine Jackson doesn't make some kind of impact in the NBA. He seems like a guy that just is too competitive not to be a guy who makes an impact.
I mean,
in the
NBA.
NBA.
I love Marcus Smart, something like that, where even if he's never a star player, you're gonna want the guy on your team because of the way he plays, like Ron Artest, those kind of guys. Even if they're never 25-point scorers, Tatum may have that kind of upside, but he may end up being like Tobias Harris, where he's a very good small forward that can score the basketball, but do I really want Tobias Harris on my team? Or would I rather have Ron Artest or Marcus Smart, something like that, some guy that will help you win games?
I understand that. So that's our video here, talking about some of the top small forwards in this draft. If you have any comments or any disagreements with what we've said, feel free to leave some remarks in the comment section. But for now, this is Kendall. I'm EJ. Thanks for watching.